Hi everyone, and welcome. This video covers some top strategies for succeeding in college classes, particularly for science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM classes. Having been an engineering student, an engineer, and a college professor, I have seen firsthand many strategies which work well for helping students be successful. Some of these strategies may be familiar to you, while others may be new. The strategies we cover have helped many students, but I recommend that you experiment to figure out what approaches work best for you. Learning how to succeed in the classroom is important enough that it is actually a required topic in many Introduction to Engineering courses. Before we begin, I would like to share a disclaimer. Please remember that everyone is unique and there is no one-size-fits-all approach which guarantees success. Also, if you find that you need additional support, consider reaching out to an academic advisor, counselor, career coach, or other professional for your specific situation. So this video is about strategies for succeeding. Let's begin with some context. Here are the most common reasons I see for why students struggle in STEM classes. It's helpful to look at these factors impacting student success so that we can develop our own strategies to be more successful. Also, please note that these reasons are based on my experiences teaching undergraduate and community college students in programming and engineering. Depending on your campus and your specific discipline, you may find other reasons or different reasons as well. So here we go. Here are the most common mistakes I see students make in STEM classes. If you avoid the following issues, you are more likely to be successful. The number one reason I see why students struggle with classes is time. Specifically, not enough time spent on the class in order to master the material. This could be for a variety of reasons, both within or outside a student's control. However, at the end of the day, there is no such thing as a free lunch. All college classes require a bare minimum amount of time invested in order to learn the material. By definition, each unit of college classes typically requires a minimum of 3 hours of time commitment per unit per week. This 3 hours per unit per week includes time spent attending lecture, completing assignments, and studying on one's own time to learn the material. For example, if you're taking a 3-unit class, that 3-unit class would be approximately 9 hours per week, bare minimum time commitment. Students unable to dedicate this bare minimum time generally find themselves falling behind and failing courses. The second reason I see is studying wrong. For example, reading the textbook, memorizing, or watching lecture videos rather than practicing problems yourself. The third reason I see is being underprepared in prerequisite courses and skills. Prerequisite skills include things like having completed Calculus 1 before taking Calculus 2. Also, this includes other skills like knowing good study habits and soft skills like communication and teamwork. Students lacking prerequisite skills, or students who barely pass the prerequisite courses, often struggle in the next class. Reason number 4 is poor test-taking skills. Taking exams, especially in STEM classes, can be scary and very uncomfortable, especially in the beginning. Students who are unprepared or who have difficulty taking exams often end up with lower grades. Thankfully, test-taking is a skill which can be improved with practice. Our fifth reason is attention to detail. Students who do not read instructions or questions fully, or miss due dates, make careless errors, or miss other details, these students tend to struggle in their courses. Reason 6 is being unable or afraid to ask for help. This is particularly dangerous when students develop gaps in their knowledge, which cause students to fall behind and struggle later on in the class. Reason 7 is related to reason 6. Falling behind in a class is very dangerous. Often STEM classes are very cumulative, and each week builds upon the next. I find that students who fall more than 1 to 2 weeks behind end up unsuccessful in the class due to being unable to catch up. Reason number 8 is a fixed mindset. Especially when we are faced with challenging problems, it is easy to get stuck and want to give up or feel like you just aren't good at that skill. A fixed mindset is dangerous because it can prevent students from developing needed problem skills. It can also lead to imposter syndrome, where you start to doubt whether you even belong in the class. Developing a growth mindset, where you believe your skills can improve with practice and effort, is key in order to overcome these issues. Reason 9 is not studying the right material and/or not knowing all the topics covered. Forgetting to or being unable to learn some of the topics in the class can and does sometimes happen. Finally, reason 10 is relying too heavily on other people or external materials. At the end of the day, there is no such thing as a free lunch. You need to be willing and able to put in the time and effort to learn the material yourself. The internet, AI tools, online solution manuals, and other knowledge is easy to find online. And while these tools can be used appropriately to aid in the learning process, many students are tempted to rely on these tools too much as a crutch or substitute for putting in the time to learn the material yourself. Students who rely too heavily on external resources as a substitute for putting in the time and effort generally will be unable to succeed when it's time for exams, job interviews, and ultimately in the real world. Even in the engineering industry, I have seen people get fired for faking their resumes or not being able to learn and do their jobs well. So you really need to take the time now to learn the right way before you get to the real world. All right, so now let's briefly preview our key strategies for succeeding in STEM. I've boiled them down into 10 key strategies. Let's go through them one by one, and then we'll go through them in greater detail. Also, please note that while these strategies work for many people, everyone is unique. Some of these strategies might work better for you than others, or you might find completely different tools which are even more useful. So use these strategies as a starting point and modify your approach as needed. Figuring out the optimal strategies to ensure your own success is a very important part of the learning process. Also, these strategies are not intended to replace advice from a career coach or medical professional. So seek out the experts if you find you need additional support. All right, here we go. The 10 strategies are the following. First, be patient. Next, be kind to yourself. Build your village of supporters. Get comfortable with making mistakes and asking for help. Develop a strong attention to detail. Adopt the habits of expert problem solvers. Set SMART goals. Master time management and organizational skills. Study the right way, smarter not harder. And finally, adopt habits of expert test takers. Many of these strategies are relatively simple, but they are not necessarily easy. In the rest of the video, we will review each of these strategies in more detail and provide additional information and hints about how to implement them. Again, this is based on my own experience as a student, engineer, and professor. So I encourage you to experiment and figure out what works best for you as well. All right, our first strategy is to be patient. I like to give the running analogy. Succeeding in a STEM path is like training for a marathon. Nobody is able to run a marathon or how to do calculus without training first. Nobody becomes an expert overnight. Nobody is born with these abilities. Have you heard of the 10,000-hour rule? Some people say you need to spend 10,000 hours of practice in order to master a skill. Learning and mastering the skills needed for a STEM career takes a significant amount of time and practice over an extended period of time. You have to give yourself this time. There is no way around it. This is particularly challenging in STEM disciplines. Our society focuses so heavily on people's accomplishments and rarely shows all the time, effort, practice, struggles, and failures needed to accomplish a result. Also worth noting is that even after you earn your degree and go work in the real world, it will still take time to ramp up and learn the ropes in whatever job you take. So being patient is important even after you graduate, too. So here are our key takeaways for being patient. There are no shortcuts or free lunches. Math, science, engineering, programming, writing, and other skills take extensive time and preparation to master, and you have to give yourself this time. Also, budget a bare minimum of 3 hours per week of time commitment for each 1 unit of classes you are taking. Often students struggle in STEM classes not due to lack of ability, but due to lack of time. So you need to be willing to invest the time you need to master the topics. Our next strategy is being kind to yourself. So what do we mean by being kind to yourself? You need to make sure you take care of yourself and treat yourself as you would a loved one you greatly care for. Would you force a loved one to study 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no rest? Would you constantly criticize a loved one for making a mistake or struggling with a topic? Hopefully not. The idea here is to be mindful of how you treat yourself and mindful of that voice inside your head, and ensure that you are being kind and caring to yourself. This way you can focus on all the other aspects of the STEM path, which are challenging enough as it is. Next, be careful of negativity and what I like to call the deficit mindset. In STEM, we are surrounded by problems everywhere, and it is so easy to focus on what is wrong. What is wrong with our project? What is wrong with our design? And even what is wrong with ourselves? And if we focus too much on all the negatives, it can start to hurt our own physical and mental health. Nobody can be perfect all the time, but it's important to maintain a positive attitude and positive outlook as much as we can. Another very important part of being kind to yourself is managing your willpower. We are all human, and we can only work so hard for so long. At some point, everyone needs to take a break. You need to make sure you schedule time for recharging willpower in a healthy way and taking care of yourself. There is more to life than just STEM. And if you do not recharge your willpower, you will eventually burn out and be unable to continue. You also want to make sure you have a life and some kind of hobbies and enjoyment outside of your STEM studies or your STEM career. If you place too much of your own identity and self-worth into your education or career, you may lose sight of other vital things, such as your own health, personal relationships, and overall well-being. Finally, the last point here is something I heard a lot early on in my career. You need to grow a thick skin. What we mean by this is avoiding taking stuff personally. You will unavoidably mess up, and there will be very frustrating things that come up. You need to be able to bounce back and recover, and not let those successes or failures define you and your own self-worth. Our next key strategy is to build your village. Have you heard the saying, "It takes a village"? To help you along your education and career journey, it's important to build and find your village of positive people who support you. This village can include friends, classmates, mentors, accountability partners, instructors, professors, and others. Surrounding yourself with positive people who can support and encourage you is very important to help you stay motivated and overcome challenges. Let's briefly cover a bit more about who you might want to have as part of your village. Friends and classmates can be great study partners and a support network to help you through tough classes. And accountability partners are really helpful because they can help you achieve your goals by providing honest feedback and keeping you on track. So having these people there to help push you and give you that feedback is key. Seeking out mentors is also very important. Mentors are people who can help you plan and pursue your goals, give you encouragement when you need it, tell you constructive, honest feedback, help you learn and grow your skills, and connect you to other people and opportunities. A key takeaway here is that successful professionals have mentors throughout their careers. and especially at the beginning. So you should do your best to seek out mentors to help you along your way. Your instructors or other campus resources can be a good starting point. Sometimes mentoring programs are also available. Another important member of your village is your professors and instructors. Take advantage of opportunities to get to know your professors and instructors. They can help you with many things, including the following. First, answering questions about the class's topics during office hours or before and after class. Also, identifying strategies to succeed in the class. As you know, your instructors and professors are the ones who write the exams, and so they would know best how to succeed. Also, writing recommendation letters and serving as professional references. Professors can also help you connect to opportunities like internships, jobs, and financial aid, and help you learn more about the real world and STEM professions. Finally, instructors and professors can help you connect to research opportunities at research universities. Often, professors and office hours can be very underutilized, so I highly recommend taking advantage of this opportunity to gain additional support from your instructors. Here is one other important benefit of getting to know your professors and instructors. If your professor or instructor knows you from office hours and knows you are trying hard in their class, it is much easier to write strong recommendation letters or round you to a higher letter grade if you are on the border between letter grades. So get to know your instructors, and you will thank yourself later on if the time comes when you need a recommendation letter for a scholarship or a job or something else. And remember that many professors, myself included, we chose the teaching profession because we want to help students succeed. So we're not trying to be scary or intimidating. We genuinely want to help students. You might also be wondering, how do you build positive working relationships with your instructors and professors? Here are some ways to impress your professors and build a positive working relationship. First, you want to treat class as a job you care greatly about, and your instructor or professor as your boss. Next, pay attention to details. Read instructions thoroughly and be aware of all the class policies. Also, be professional and show that you care. Get to class on time and be respectful. Submit quality work on time and proofread and double-check your work. Also, make sure you are able to dedicate enough time for the class. You need to budget a bare minimum of 3 hours per 1 unit per week in order to have enough time to master the material. Also, be responsible for your success. Manage your time, effort, assignments, and progress to set yourself up for success. And if you're finding that you have trouble, reach out and get help. Take responsibility for your success. Next, be polite. Say please and thank you. And participate in the class and ask good questions. What I mean by this is questions which can be answered by reading the instructions or syllabus. Those are generally not good questions, but other questions about the material are completely fair game. And finally, attend office hours to discuss questions about the class itself or other topics of interest which your instructor might know about. Finally, here's our last point about building your village. You need to make sure you get connected and stay connected to the people in your village. Take advantage of opportunities to meet people and maintain your network, including building connections with classmates, student organizations, and career fairs. Also consider using tools such as LinkedIn to stay connected with the people you've met. Our next success strategy is getting comfortable with making mistakes and asking for help. This is a tough one. Today's society, academic culture, and social media often focus on people's successes, perfect images, and polished results. And by doing this, I think we do everyone a disservice, because we do not see the time, effort, struggles, and failures that happen in order to make those accomplishments possible. So here are some truths about failure. In science and engineering, failure is, unfortunately, a normal part of the process. For example, during my PhD research, most of my experiments failed, but I still got my PhD when the experiments finally worked. In industry, I've also encountered dozens of delays and issues in projects. If you learn about project management and product development, you will learn that good project managers put buffer in a schedule to allow time to recover when unexpected issues happen or when unavoidable issues happen. The truth is, struggling and making mistakes is how we learn, master skills, and get experience. I like these two quotes. First, experience is the name everyone gives to their mistakes. And then the other one, mistakes are embarrassing when they happen, but years later, you have a collection of mistakes called experience. The key takeaway here is that you will make mistakes. This is part of the learning process. Okay, so we need to get comfortable with making mistakes. And we also need to get comfortable with asking for help. And this can certainly be awkward and uncomfortable at first. Really, the sooner you get comfortable here asking for help, the sooner you will be able to master the topics in your classes. So please remember that asking for help is a completely normal part of the learning process. And you can generally get help from your instructor's office hours, campus resources like free tutoring and student organizations, and sometimes other places as well. The key thing to note here is make sure you get help the right way and follow academic integrity rules. Students who violate academic integrity rules, such as by cheating or copying others or inappropriately using AI tools, you'll ultimately just hurt yourself when you're unable to understand the topics in your future courses and in job interviews and the real world. Here are a few things to consider when asking for help. First, make sure you ask effectively for best results. For example, consider these email messages. These are 4 messages similar to actual messages I've received. Which of these messages would you be able to answer most quickly and efficiently? Take a look at message A, B, C, and D here. And think about which one would you be able to answer most quickly and easily in order to help that person. And if you need, go ahead and pause the video if you need a little more time to read these. All right, and hopefully you find that the last message, message D, is the easiest one to answer. Note that in messages A, B, and C, the instructor would need to ask the student more questions in order to have enough information to help the student. For example, student A's message is missing a subject and doesn't specify the class. Message B uses the professor's first name, which could be disrespectful. Message C doesn't provide enough information for the instructor to be able to see the student's error. And message D is ultimately the most effective, since the student is polite, respectful, and they provide enough information so that the professor can immediately help the student and identify the problem. So it's a lot more efficient to use an approach like message D. Here are some other things to remember when asking for help. First, be polite and respectful. Address your instructors as professor or doctor unless instructed otherwise. It's just kind of typical for the academic culture. Also, make sure that your question has not already been answered in the class syllabus or in the assignment instructions. Read the instructions that you've been given very carefully and pay attention to details. Also, make it easy for the instructor to answer your question quickly. If you provide all the relevant information, like the class, assignment, question number, what you've tried, code you've written, it's a lot easier for the instructor to help you quickly. Make sure you're willing to wait 24 to 48 hours for a response, and if needed, send the instructor a reminder of your message. If you need a response faster, consider asking in office hours. Also, make sure you say thank you. Teaching is often a thankless profession, and instructors really do appreciate being appreciated. Finally, let's finish out our Asking for Help section by covering how to make the most of office hours. Here are a few hints. If possible, make an appointment or arrive early to the office hours. And if possible, also email the professor ahead of time to give them a heads up about your question. It's also helpful to be prepared with specific questions or items to ask, and take notes. Bring a notebook or a tablet so that you're ready to go and you can write stuff down. Also, have your assignments, code, or supporting information readily available so that you can more easily discuss your questions. And attend the help hours regularly, not just at the end of the semester or after an exam. And finally, if you got questions wrong on an assignment or an exam and you're not sure why, that's really a great time to ask about it. Don't just lose the points and forget about it, but actually try to learn from where you went wrong. Our next strategy is to develop a strong attention to detail. Attention to detail is the ability to focus on all areas of a project or task, no matter how small. People with excellent attention to detail are thorough in reviewing their work, and as a result, the work is generally more accurate and free of errors. As an instructor, I can tell you that attention to detail often separates the A and B students from the students who earn a C or below in a class. Attention to detail is also vital when working in industry in order to effectively solve problems, work with customers, and develop products. So, how do we develop a strong attention to detail? Here are some tips. First, always carefully read and follow the instructions. Start assignments early as well, so that you give yourself enough time to read through all the requirements carefully. Also, writing down notes and important details so that you remember them is really helpful. And make sure you proofread your work as you go and when you're finished. If you're writing code for a class, make sure you pay attention to syntax rules and good coding practices. And finally, ensure that your work is professional, free of errors or typos, and something you would be proud to submit to a future boss at a future workplace. If your work is really sloppy or unprofessional, that can really reflect poorly on you. Our next success strategy is to adopt the habits of expert problem solvers. So, what do we mean here by adopting these habits? Let's first review some of these important habits. First is attention to detail. Notice the differences between novice and expert problem solvers. Expert problem solvers show all their work, proofread their work, read instructions several times, follow instructions carefully, and avoid making errors. Novices fail to do some or all of these things, and they make mistakes. Next is how people approach problems. Experts try to understand the problem. Experts will apply their knowledge and think holistically, considering the big picture of the problem. In contrast, novices will attempt to memorize or follow a set recipe, which may or may not work properly when problems are unique or challenging. Third is problem-solving style. Experts are organized. They break problems into parts, they show all their work, draw pictures, and seek to understand. Novices are often sloppy, they don't show their work, they might skip steps, and they may not fully understand what the problem is. Fourth is how problem solvers approach problems when they're stuck. Notice the differences here. Experts seek to understand, they ask the instructor for help, and they persevere. Novices may blindly guess, search online, or simply give up. All right, 2 more habits to go. Here is a comparison about how novices and experts make mistakes. Notice that novices are afraid to make mistakes, and they may even just leave problems blank. Experts, on the other hand, are not afraid to make mistakes. Experts learn from their mistakes. They do their best to make an attempt at each problem they face, and the experts may even develop new approaches. The last habit is attitude. Notice the differences here. Novices can be very negative, self-critical, and give up easily. Novices may be afraid to ask for help. In contrast, expert problem solvers have what we call a growth mindset. Experts are positive, hungry to learn and improve, they're persistent and resourceful, and they ask questions without hesitation. So here's a summary of all the habits we've covered. I'm not saying that you have to follow all the expert habits all the time in order to be successful. However, if you do your best to try to adopt at least a few of these habits at a time, you will likely be more successful when solving problems. Before we move on to the next strategy, let's briefly cover a little bit more about how to develop a growth mindset for problem solving. A growth mindset is the belief that you can cultivate and improve upon your own abilities through practice and effort. Compare that with a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset dictates that a student's ability is largely predetermined and unchangeable. The key takeaway here is that a growth mindset is a vital skill that will help you overcome challenges and develop creative problem-solving skills. Let's take a look at some examples. Here's some side-by-side comparisons of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. So someone with a fixed mindset might say, I don't know how to do this. I give up. I'll leave this question blank. In comparison, someone with a growth mindset could say, I don't know this yet. What do I know? How can I figure this out? Let me get this a try and also reach out to the instructor for help if I need. Another example. Fixed mindset might say, computer programming isn't for me, it doesn't make any sense. On the other hand, someone with a growth mindset would say, if I don't try, I have already failed. With time and effort, I could succeed. So how do we develop a growth mindset? Here are some tips. The first step is to recognize when you are experiencing fixed mindset thinking, including times when you're negative or are facing limiting beliefs, maybe times you're opposed to change and uncertainty, times when you're trying to avoid pain or taking risks, and times when you feel that your skills and intellect just cannot change. And the idea is, once you've recognized that you might be having this fixed mindset thinking, you want to try to replace those thoughts with a growth mindset. And here are some ways you can do that. One way is to replace I can't with how can I? Also, being open to new approaches and ideas. And also remembering that skills and talents can be developed through effort and practice. We all start somewhere. So maybe you're not an expert yet, but with effort and practice, you can get there. So here are our key takeaways. Developing a growth mindset and the habits of expert problem solvers will really help you solve and overcome challenges more effectively. Problem solving really is a skill that takes time to develop, and these are really great tools to help you improve those skills. Also, attitude is one thing you can control. And so approaching tasks with a positive attitude, even when there's a ton of problems everywhere and things are crazy, having that positive attitude is a key to success. Remember that people generally like to work with colleagues who are positive and energetic, not people who are negative and draining. And while nobody can be 100% happy all the time, making an effort to stay positive and have fun, even in the face of problems, can be very beneficial both to you and to those around you. Our next important success strategy is setting SMART goals. Have you heard that you can be up to 42% more likely to achieve goals if you write them down? This is indeed a thing, and so many career coaches and professionals recommend using this SMART acronym to help set effective goals. SMART goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Let's look at a quick example. Suppose you want to improve your time management skills. A non-SMART goal would be, I want to manage my time better. A SMART goal would be, every Sunday evening, I will set aside 30 minutes to make a daily plan for the week and schedule specific times to complete schoolwork, other obligations, and required tasks. Notice the differences. The SMART goal is very specific, and it is very easy to track and know whether or not you have achieved it. Setting SMART goals is so important that I even make it an assignment in some of my introductory engineering courses. I personally have benefited greatly from using SMART goals and writing a 5-year plan, so please consider using these tools as well. Our 8th strategy is to master time management and organizational skills. So mastering time management is a secret to success. Everyone has just 24 hours per day and 7 days per week. So planning carefully and making the most of your time will help you be more effective. Here are some very interesting quotes about time management. First, a principal engineer I worked with once said you need to manage your time like you would manage your money. And also, Eisenhower, what is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important. Really emphasizing the importance of planning and long-term strategies and goals. And really, in order to do good time management, you want to try using to-do lists, online calendars, and other tools to help you manage your time. Here are some very important tips, particularly for students. One of the biggest tips I share with students is the following. For every 1 unit of class, you should budget a bare minimum of 3 hours per week of time, just for that one class. So for example, if you're taking 12 units, that means you need to budget 36 hours per week for those classes. More challenging courses, or courses you are underprepared for, may even need additional time. The 3 hours per week is a bare minimum. I am not making up this rule. So this rule is actually a standard definition for what 1 unit of college classes is worth. And I did not know this when I was a student. I wish someone had told me about this rule when I was a student feeling the pressure of taking 18, 20, or more units of classes at one time. And it can especially be challenging to manage your time if you are also working as well as going to school. The 60-hour rule can be a very helpful tool to estimate how many hours of work and class you can fit in your schedule. In order to estimate how much work you can fit, you just take 60 hours, you subtract 3 times the number of units you're taking, and that gives you the number of hours you have available to work. For example, if you are taking 15 units of classes, you would have 60 hours minus 3 times 15 units, which would be 45, and that would leave you approximately 15 hours per week available to work. So again, this rule ensures that for every 1 unit of class you are taking, you have that bare minimum 3 hours per week of time set aside. And notice once again that that time includes time going to class, watching the lectures, completing assignments and labs, and studying and practicing on your own. Here's some additional tips. First, figure out what time management strategies work best for you. And so maybe you like paper lists, paper planners, or electronic tools or apps, but figure out what works. You will need to use time management both in school and in the real world. And in the real world, it's especially tricky. You may not have, meetings at set times, but you need to actually go out and schedule things and manage your own availability. And there's too many strategies to cover here, but really the big thing I emphasize is experiment until you find a system which works for you. Here are some other organization tips to consider. So, in addition to managing time, organizing information is also a vital skill, and you definitely need it both in school and when you are out in the real world. So, first thing, figure out a way that works for you to keep all your course materials and information organized. So, using things like binders, OneNote, folders on your computer, and other tools. Also, most instructors provide a course outline that shows the topics and book chapters which will be covered in the class. So, if you can, skimming the textbook and your notes, both before and after class, will help you retain the material. Also, if you find you have difficulty keeping up with the class, like writing notes during lectures, consider skimming the book chapters that the lecture is covering ahead of time and pre-writing down formulas or other information before the actual lecture. Then you can fill in more details during the class itself and save yourself some time. Also note that some campuses also offer assistance, such as lecture recording or note-taking services for eligible students. Also, pay special attention to topics and examples highlighted during class time and in homework assignments. If a professor bothers to cover the topic during class, that's probably the topics that are considered most important. Our next strategy is to study the right way, studying smarter, not harder. To do this, we must first ensure that we learn how to learn effectively. And it turns out that our brain physically changes when we learn. So, nerve cells in our brain actually form new connections when we learn something for the first time. And these connections between nerve cells are strengthened every time that we practice something. So, the more we practice, the stronger the connections become, and the faster nerve impulses can travel. And so, in order to learn more effectively, we also must take care of ourselves. Eating healthy and getting sufficient sleep actually helps enable these nerve connections to form and grow. And so when you get a good night of sleep between practice or study sessions, your brain can reactivate connections made during the day. Our key takeaway is this: succeeding in STEM also requires taking care of your whole self. So give yourself time to attend class, as well as time to practice, rest, recover, and take care of yourself. And do your best to balance school, work, family, and other areas, because balancing work and life is key, both in school and in the real world. When figuring out how to learn more effectively, also pay attention to learning styles. Some people have different learning styles. Auditory learners learn best by hearing, visual learners learn best by seeing, kinesthetic learners learn best by feeling. If you find that one or more of these styles is more effective for you, use it to your advantage. Try to do more of your learning in the style that works best for you. So we've learned how we learn. How do we actually use this? How do we use this to study the right way? Bloom's taxonomy can provide us some insight. Bloom's taxonomy says that there are different levels of learning. The easiest is to simply remember. And as we work up our pyramid here, we see that the higher levels become more challenging. More difficult than remembering is understanding, then applying, and then analyzing. The most challenging is to evaluate and create new knowledge. And in order to advance to those higher levels of thinking, you must complete the lower level tasks and work your way up the pyramid. So, why is this relevant? Our key takeaways here are that we can't memorize our way to success in STEM. STEM courses are more challenging compared to other disciplines because we must consistently operate at higher levels of thinking, like apply, analyze, evaluate, and create, in order to solve problems, write programs, apply what we've learned, and design new solutions. So in order to study the right way, we need to practice working at the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy. So as much as possible, don't study just by memorizing. That will not be effective. Instead, study by practicing and solving problems in a similar way as you will be tested. Here is some key advice I commonly give to my students. Engineering, programming, and problem solving are like running. You can watch videos about running, read about running, or watch other people run. But at the end of the day, the only way you can truly get better at running is by running yourself. Similarly, in order to get better at engineering, programming, and problem solving, you need to design stuff, write programs, and solve problems by yourself. Here are some additional tips I recommend for studying smarter. First, create your own note sheet and formula sheet to refer to as you study. Just helps to have everything in front of you. Next, use lecture notes and labs and homework as a starting point to help determine what to focus on. Often, the topics which are most important are covered during class or in the assignments and labs. From there, you can review the textbook and additional materials as needed. Also, prepare for exams by testing yourself on homework and lecture notes. Pretend that you're taking an exam and see if you can correctly redo questions from lecture or the homework by yourself under time pressure without relying on notes or the book. Can you answer the question comfortably in a simulated exam setting? If not, ask for help or review that material further. And get comfortable asking for help when needed. The sooner you ask for help and get comfortable asking for help, the sooner you will get unstuck and be able to succeed. So take advantage of instructor office hours, campus tutoring, learning communities, and other campus resources to help. Again, asking for help is a normal part of the learning process. Next ones. Use lecture notes and assignments for initial practice problems, and then check your textbook and other places for more practice. Textbooks, YouTube, and other websites can be really good sources of practice problems. But remember, make sure you practice by doing the problems yourself. Don't just passively sit there or read and watch others. You want to do the problems yourself. Put pencil to paper and do the problems yourself. And ask the instructor if you aren't sure what topics are covered or if you'd like more recommendations about practice problems or ways to study. And know what tools are available during exams. If you have exams requiring many formulas or equations, make sure you know what equations you need to memorize and what equations may be available for reference. And if you're allowed any notes or formula sheets, be sure to make them clear, organized, and easy to use. Finally, plan short breaks and recharge time during study sessions to preserve your willpower and keep your mind fresh. Figure out what works best for you for optimizing study time with break time. All right, so finally, we will end with our last strategy, adopting the habits of expert test takers. From my experience, here are the key differentiators I see for students who get A's on exams. We've already covered the first items here, such as time, attention to detail, growth mindset, asking for help, and studying effectively. So here we will cover the last item, test-taking skills, which enable you to perform well and prepare well for exams. And again, important to note and remember here is that while raw ability and aptitude for STEM are helpful, these are not a hard requirement based on what I've seen. Most important are these above items, and notice that all of these can be improved with time, hard work, and support. So the first thing to remember is that studying and test taking are skills which improve with practice. So let's cover each part of this test taking process. Preparation, during the exam itself, and after the exam. So first, make sure you know the logistical information like date, time, room number, materials allowed, topics covered. Pack all your materials for the exam the night before so you don't forget anything. Also, set multiple alarms or phone reminders to ensure that you arrive on time. And plan to arrive on campus well before the exam, so you can find parking if needed and not need to rush. Keep your mind fresh, and do your best to arrive at the exam fed and well rested. And if you can, avoid scheduling work, family obligations, or other extra tasks right before or right after the exam when possible. And consider finding a quiet, distraction free place to wait prior to the exam, rather than in front of the exam room where it can be distracting, uncomfortable, or stressful. And if you have multiple exams in the same day, plan to bring snacks, caffeine, or whatever else you need to help recharge. You want to do your best to set yourself up with a fresh mind for each exam. So, another question that some students ask me is, how do you know that you are prepared? Here are some hints to think about. First, if possible, make a list of potential exam topics and check them off as you review them. Also, as much as possible, put yourself in simulated exam situations. Try putting yourself in mock exams where you complete the past lecture, homework, and other practice problems as if it were the real exam. If you can comfortably solve these problems on your own without relying on your notes or other help, you are probably well prepared. Also, recognize when you have prepared as well as you can. Often there are infinitely many practice problems, and it is not possible to practice every possible type of problem. At a certain point, you must trust that you have learned the skills well enough to be able to figure out similar problems which may appear on the exam. And finally, be kind to yourself. If you have put forth your best possible effort to learn the material in the class, and you've completed the items on your study checklist, that's all you can do. Many students get nervous or have test-taking anxiety prior to exams. And here are some tips. First, preparing well for an exam can help ease anxiety. So, do your best to make and follow a study plan and be as prepared as you can. Also, get comfortable in simulated exam situations. Practice solving problems with a time limit under similar conditions. Visualization is another powerful technique. Before the exam, try visualizing yourself solving problems calmly and correctly, and avoiding common mistakes that one might make. Also, consider using apps for meditation, breathing exercises, positive affirmations, and other mindfulness tools to help calm your mind. Some people find that watching a funny video or listening to favorite music can also help reduce stress prior to exams. And as we mentioned previously, be kind to yourself. Recognize when you have done the best you can to prepare. At a certain point, there's nothing more you can do. And also, don't be afraid to consider getting professional help or using campus wellness resources if you find that you need additional help managing anxiety, mental health, or other concerns. And sometimes getting professional help or even just talking with another person can make a big difference. And again, the tips I shared here can be helpful, but they're certainly not intended to be a substitute for getting professional help if you do need help managing anxiety or other issues. All right, so now let's cover a few strategies for doing well during the exam. First, skim through the whole exam and consider answering the easier questions first. And pay attention to detail. Read each question twice and proofread your work, especially for units, precision, and calculation errors. And be mindful of time and the points to time ratio. If you are stuck for more than 1 to 2 minutes on a problem, consider moving on to another problem. And if time is limited, focus on earning the most points you can within the time you have. Next, make it easy for your instructor to give you full or partial credit. Write clearly and show all your work. If you show all your work but just made a sign error, you will probably still earn significant partial credit. If you are stuck or if you are running out of time, write what you would have done or why you are stuck. Write what you do know, such as relevant formulas, equations, or approaches to solve the problem. Next, never ever leave questions blank. Always make an attempt and write down what you do know and what you would try. Draw pictures to visualize more complex problems. Pictures can help you digest and simplify problems, especially when there is a lot going on. Also, proofread your work prior to turning in your exam. If you have time left over at the end, use all the remaining time to check your work and ensure you have completed all the problems. Here are some additional strategies for getting unstuck during the exam. First, take a few deep breaths. Breathing helps you stay relaxed and delivers oxygen to your brain. Sometimes we forget to breathe, and simply breathing and relaxing for a moment will allow that missing thought that we need to pop up. Also, adopt a growth mindset. Focus on what you do know or what you could figure out, following the growth mindset. Drawing pictures can also really help visualize what's going on. Also, avoid spending too long on one problem. Moving on to another can help sort of shift gears, and maybe coming back later will help you figure out what you missed. And if all else fails, maximize your potential for earning partial credit. In your work, clearly write down what part of the problem you got stuck on and why, so that your instructor can follow your work and your thought process. If possible, assume a value for the part of the problem you're stuck on, and see if you can complete other parts of the problem with a placeholder value to show what you do know on the other parts. Finally, it is important to complete a few key tasks after the exam. After you receive your graded exam back, make sure you understand all the questions, especially any that you answered incorrectly or those you got lucky and happened to guess right. You want to try to reflect on what worked well and where you could improve. Over time, you can determine what study strategies work best for you. And finally, I also highly recommend stopping by your instructor's office hours to discuss any questions you have answered incorrectly or ones you weren't sure about. Instructors do notice and remember when students take the time to learn and improve after an exam. I've worked with instructors who even unofficially reward students with extra partial credit if the student takes the extra time and effort to stop in office hours, make corrections, and learn from their mistakes. So to wrap up, here are the key strategies we've covered once again. I really hope you find them helpful and that you can use some of these to be more successful. And remember that every person is unique, so it's a good idea to try some of these and adjust them as needed. And feel free to reach out if you have any further questions on this. Well, thank you again for watching. I wish you the best of luck, and I hope you find these strategies helpful in your future academic and professional career.